So, Howard Davis.
Howard Davis, welcome. Thank you.
So we, Josh and I are both Providence Classical Academy dads. That would be our category.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Josh doesn't tend to show up to many events though. I haven't seen you at field day the past few years, Josh.
This is a point of contention in my family.
Okay.
For the record, I do live an hour away, so there's that.
Yes.
But we willingly make the drive, Monday through Friday, because we believe
that is commitment.
We believe in the school. We believe in Howard and what he's doing.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
How many other schools do you pass on the way?
Oh, quite a few.
Yeah.
Quite a few, including my, alma mater. Correct. So it's a big deal.
You mean Central Classical Academy?
Well, Central School Corporation, as they were known.
That's right.
During that time. But to say that, listen, we're big believers and we're big fans.
Yes.
And we appreciate everything that Howard does. Yeah. And could my participation go up a little bit? Yes, it could. Yes, it could. We're about personal growth on this podcast, so we'll work on that.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, we call each other out on some things. So so I was when I was at the ceremony for the ribbon cutting of the new building, and you shared a little bit of the story there. It was very windy. We had Secret Service was there because Mike Johnson was there.
That's right.
So I told my kids on the way to behave, and Carter said, "I won't make a bomb threat today." So no, he guaranteed he wouldn't do that. But just hearing the story, I told Josh, we really need to get Howard in here just to ask him just the story. Our passion is businesses and organizations in Shreveport Bossier, and that's one of the things we've talked about is, even though you're a nonprofit or an organization, it has to be ran like a business, right? Or it will fail no matter how important the mission is, right?
That's right.
And you depend a lot on outside raising funds, and that's been really impressive in part of your story. So let's get into it. So you did we just celebrate 20 years? Was that it?
Yes, this is the 20th year of Providence, yeah.
20th year. And what was year one like?
So basically the school started, I was pastoring.
Pull that mic in just a little bit closer. Yeah, just pull it closer to you.
Is that better right there?
Yeah. It's pretty cool and fancy.
Okay, cool. So I was pastoring a really small church called Grace Presbyterian, and we had 3 young girls at the time. We now have 5 girls, and we were trying to figure out what to do with the education of our oldest girl. Her name was Ellie. She was about 4, and so we were thinking a year and a half we would start looking at schools and such. We looked at magnet schools. We lived in Shreveport at the time. They seemed like good education, but obviously weren't Christian. That was something that's really critical to us. And we met a couple families kids who went through magnet systems. They were great families from great churches, but the kids were abandoning the faith, largely because they were asking questions that they weren't getting great answers from their church, but they were getting alternative answers from school, especially from peers. And so when I heard that, I was like, I'm inquisitive. I imagine my kids are going to be inquisitive. Let's look around different Christian schools. And it seemed like at the time they were more into sports than academics. It was more about, a one-time gospel presentation more than kind of a total Christ-centered discipleship kind of thing. And so we experienced classical education. Melissa is a teacher by training. And so we said, hey, what if we did a crazy thing and started a school, which is truly a crazy thing to do. And so we had an interest meeting in Broadmoor Library. About 15 families showed up to the meeting, and nearly all of them said, we want you to start this school. We want you to start in 6 months, because it's February 2005. We're like, man, we were thinking like a year and a half out, but I guess we can do it if there's enough interest. And so we started kind of homeschool co-op with 17 students at Broadmoor Baptist. And it was K through 4th grade. It was riding on the backs of a lot of volunteer moms, honestly, including my wife. And the first year went really well. And the second year, there was more interest, and we wanted to make it a full-time school. So it was like a part-time reality the first year. And so the second year, I met a guy named Keith Fashawn, who was the assistant pastor at First Baptist Bossier. And he basically said, I want to bring my kid. And I want y'all to come meet at our school and let's kind of be a shepherd or umbrella for y'all. And so Pastor Fred Lowry was really gracious and let us come there. We met there for 5.5, 6 years. And it was a great place for us to incubate. So we grew from there. Second year was like 35 kids. By year 6, we were about 120 students. And it was a slow growth, slow developing model.
At what point did you stop your pastor role?
Yeah. So 5 years in, we had a lady leading the school, and she was great, but she went through some personal crisis and it started getting overwhelming leading a school. So she kind of just crashed. And so we were like, I was like, I'll step in as interim for the last 4 months or whatever. And let's find a head of school that has experience. And we found a couple, and they came here, and one of them was very experienced. We thought we'd like him, and then he just was not right for the culture here in Bossier. And so, and the other guy who came, we thought he had been without a job for like 1.5 years. He was a good fit for our school, for the community, but he turned us down. And when he turned us down, I was like, well, I guess I'm doing this longer. And so I kind of signed up for a 3 to 5 year gig. That was 2010. And so, 15 years later, I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And I did both pastoring and leading the school through 2015. And so, when I first took over the school, it was 120 students. Honestly, if you're used to managing things, 120 students is not a crazy thing to manage. It was about 10 teachers or so. But then the school started growing. So we grew from 120 to 180, 180 to 250, 250 to 320, 320 to 380. And that was about 5 years. And so that's crazy growth.
Yeah.
You're ramping up all kind of systems. And I'm a intuitive kind of socialized leader.
Yeah.
I'm not a systems guy.
Yeah.
And so it just came a lot. And so I ended up stepping down from the school for a year and stepping back into the church. And then at about halfway into that year, the board said, hey, the new guy who's taking over is not working out. We really want you to come back. We want you to come back full time. So since 2015-16, I've been in this role full time.
Yeah. I think that's probably when we started coming there because let's see, Carter's in the 10th grade. We started in the 2nd grade, so 8 years ago.
Yeah,
so probably right around then.
That's right. Yeah,
yeah. And I think I'm and it might not be correct, but I think that his first year was like the first graduating class. Maybe
that's right.
So it was like 2 kids or something.
That's right.
So one was your daughter, maybe, or something.
Yeah, it was before my daughter. So. Okay. 2016 was our first graduating class. So this is gonna be our 10th graduating class.
Yeah.
We started with 2 graduates, and they were 2 families that were like, hey, we want this education and we don't care if it's weird. Mm-hmm. And so, and then we had a class of 8 and then a class of 16.
And how many will graduate this year?
So we'll have about 23 graduate this year. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about, explain, I could mumble around to explain what classical education is, but I don't know the real definition.
Yeah, so I'm sure if you asked even 20 different classical leaders, you're going to get 20 different answers. But at the end of the day, it's an old way of educating that started in Greece and Rome, further developed in the medieval period. And the focus is really on character development. So what kind of person, what kind of virtue is this person going to have and how do you get there? And so it tends to focus a lot on reading books, discussion, developing skills like speaking, thinking, writing. But the real aim is developing a person of character who's going to live for something greater than themselves, which fits well with Christian educations, because at the end of the day, we want to develop disciples who love, trust, and live for Jesus in all of life, that the gospel is the thing that is the bedrock, the foundation for life, but it's also the thing that propels them to live in a way that serves the Lord and serves others and not just themselves, which is pretty radical, countercultural.
Yeah. I remember the first, when we did the tour, and I think we probably sat down or maybe we had a conversation, but we also played basketball together some. So I can't remember when the conversation happened, but early on you said, we really through elementary school or through lower school, 5th grade, we're really driving facts home, right? Then we start, the rest of their schooling is, how do you put that into practice? How do you live those things out?
Yeah. And classical education tends to focus on memorization in younger grades. So story, songs, chants, learning how to read, do math well. And then in middle school, they become a little rebellious. Their minds become mushy. And they want to argue all the time. And so you basically teach them to argue and use that kind of engagement to have great education to shape them even that age, but to tell them that character matters. So just being mean is going to alienate people. So, they need to learn to get this tool of friendship, the skill of friendship. And then they're in high school, they refine a little bit more. They care more about what their peers think. And so, learning to speak well, write well, present well, those things become a lot more important. But also you can get into, greater kind of, tangent kind of things regarding like science and math and literature and history. Yeah. And they have a lot of interest and a lot of ability to think well on this subject. So, yeah.
Would the majority of classical schools that exist, are most of them Christian or most of them just classical?
Yeah, I would say most of them are Christian. Okay. So, there are some classical schools, especially like in the West, that are public schools. And so obviously they're not Christian per se, but
gotcha.
They're Christ haunted, as it were, because you can't get away from the fact that classical education and Christian education have been kind of merged at the hip for a long while.
Okay. Yeah. One thing I appreciate is, Josh wouldn't know, but whenever the parents come to something at the school, I love that you have a captive audience and you do not let them leave without sharing the gospel. Yeah. Right. You're grabbing the microphone and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you're presenting the gospel and you do it in a very clear way. And I love hearing you share it, because you're just like, hey, you're here. Let me remind you of why we're here. And, and to be honest, in an ideal world, all of the parents at our school and families at our school go to a local church and are involved and are believers, but many aren't, right? I mean, we grew up in Christian schools and, we probably had more Christians in the public schools than at our Christian schools, but so that might be the only gospel they hear, right? Yeah. Is through the school. And so,
well, I mean, Luther used to say every week you wonder why I preach the gospel to you. And it's because every week you forget it. So do I. And so we constantly need to be reminded of the good news that, it's crazy good news. Jesus came to live and die and rise again. Also, we could be reconciled to God and reshaped to live for Him, which is the very purpose we've been made for. Yeah. And that's really at the heart of why Providence exists, is to inculcate kids in that reality so that they live in light of it. So that they live for the glory of God as they're reconciled to Him.
But it is interesting too, though, because I've spoken with some different parents that, I wouldn't assume that they were believers and who have kids there. Sure. And I'm in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why are you doing this? Yeah. Why do you have your kid here? And I think there's different reasons too, right? Yeah. It's not just we want a Christian education. There's other fundamental reasons that you are attracting people.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, we're the strongest academic institution in Shreveport-Bossier. And so a lot of families come for that reason. The other thing is that even if they don't buy into the Christian message, they know that we're trying to shape beautiful human beings, virtuous human beings. And, there are a lot of people who, they're not, I say a lot, it's a small percentage, but there are a few that are Hindu or Muslim or other faiths. And they come and they're, when you come, you're another faith, it's kind of a scary thing entering into a Christian environment because you're like, are they going to hate me? Because that's what I've heard Christians sometimes do. But almost all of them, even atheist folks, would say, I was nervous because I knew it was a Christian institution, but I actually love it. And I try to convey to them that the thing they actually love is like the Christian faith being really lived out. And it's our teachers that embody that, in the most profound level, but our parents, that just a lot of people who they're there for the faith. And it's not just a moniker that we put on our chest, when we're going to church or when we go to school. It's what we're seeking to live out all of life. And especially our teachers are doing that effectively. And so it's a compelling thing when you're in the classroom and you're being loved, nurtured, pointed to virtuous things. And so there's actually a family that's Buddhist. And a few years ago, I was asking some parents what they love about our school. And she said, I just love it when my kids come home and quoting scripture. And I was like, really interesting. I love that she loves that, but she sees the virtue in it.
Yeah.
And, and I hope that, she gets the message herself, but her kids are definitely benefiting and growing and becoming beautiful human beings. And she sees that.
Yeah. I remember anytime somebody's like, well, we're going to go take a tour. And I'm like, well, get ready to sign up, But I remember when we went and toured the school, I remember walking into the second grade classroom and the teacher sitting there in front of the students has her Bible open, and teaching from the Bible. And I was like, this has to be a setup, right? Mm-hmm. But no, it really is, and then I love, even a couple of months ago, Carter's working, he's a sophomore working on he had to do a presentation on a historical picture, right? And so the picture he picked was the protester standing in front of the tank. I can't remember the whole story. So the first half of the project or the presentation is about the event, but then he has to tie it into scripture. How do we look at this event through a gospel lens? And so he's pulling out scripture about, people in power and how you respond to people in power and stuff like that, right? And so that's just ingrained in everything they do.
That's
even
really awesome.
Even reading secular literature, and then he's having to tie that back into how does that go against a gospel lens or tie in? So that's what I love, right? Seeing that.
Appreciate that
as a parent.
Yeah.
And I have to go to assemblies just to remind myself that not to be upset about paying tuition, right? I have 4 kids.
I get it.
I have 4 kids.
That's a big investment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And every month it comes out, I'm like, okay, I need to go visit. I need to go to chapel on a Friday and remember why we do this.
That's right. I appreciate that. Check that ROI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
ROI.
But, Howard, I think it is interesting that what we're talking about because, as a longtime consumer of Christian education, be it as a kid and then in college, I found myself very frustrated all along the way. Mm-hmm. Particularly in college, because it felt like the message was, we're Christian, but we're going to kind of enter into the world and do these things and learn these things. And I feel like with Providence, the difference is what you're saying is that there's a foundational layer, and this is how we do. Like if you were going to study business, like I did in college, rather than saying we're going to learn all the tactics and disciplines and studies, it's foundationally, this is how Christians are part of the counterculture and how they would do different things, could do different things, rather than let's just learn the same stuff. Oh, and by the way, we're Christian. Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So there's a lady named Nancy Pearcey, and she wrote a book called Total Truth. And in that book, she actually talks a little bit about classical Christian education, but she says the difference between classical Christian education and a lot of Christian education is that there's 2 ways you can give color to concrete. You can paint it, and it's on the surface. And what happens when it's on the surface? Well, it chips away real easily. Or you can dye it. And Christian classical education is out to dye the concrete rather than just paint it on the surface. So it's not just a surface thing. It's not just we're learning all this secular education and then we're putting a layer of Christian devotion on the top. But we're talking about how does the Christian faith and business, for instance, go together? And so if you go into business, you should care about the glory of God and the good of people. And that should be a large driver of why you do what you do, not just to make money. But obviously, even as we said at the beginning, if you don't make money, if you can't make money, then you can't sustain the mission. You can't sustain the business. But that's not the primary thing that's driving the mission. It's not making money is a necessary element to it, but it's not the primary mission. And so, that's what we want to teach our kids, that whatever they do in life, the primary mission is glory of God, good of others, and to use their gifts in a way they're passionate about. I really appreciate that. And I experienced the same frustration. I went to Baylor and it was a great education, made great friends, but it was hard to make the connections between what does the Christian faith have to do with the business classes.
Accounting.
Right. And accounting's a little more technical, but even like marketing or management, I mean, it was just like they never talked about it. They were like, oh, yeah, you need to pray to Jesus for your employees or whatever. And it's like, I mean, I appreciate that, but it's more to it. You need to love them and have the glory of God and they're good at heart if you're doing management or if you're doing marketing. It's not just selling a product, it's selling something that will help them for their good and not just to make money. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Let's talk about, so the kind of the track record. One time we had a conversation, you were talking, and I can't remember stats, but just the people that graduate through Providence and kind of, are most of them going to Christian colleges? Are they getting scholarships? Like what happens?
So that's a great question. So, kind of the easy data piece is our average ACT score over the last 10 years consistently is about 28, which is pretty high.
Is that higher than yours?
I don't know if I broke the 20s.
That's so funny.
Me and Stromae Swift, we're taking it together like 6 times in the late 90s.
That's so funny.
I was trying to get into Bipsy. He was trying to get the LSU to play basketball.
That's so funny. Like, and there is a variation between the scores. I mean, there's some, more average scores, but there's some tremendous scores too that average out to 28. But with that, I mean, a lot of our students do get scholarships. Obviously, the ones that score really high do get great scholarships usually. Do they go to Christian colleges? I'd say most of them go to state schools. I mean, TOPS is in itself a scholarship that's pretty compelling. So I'd say about 20% go to Christian colleges. Another 20% go, pretty far outside the state. But about 60, 70% are going in state.
Okay.
And the coolest stat that for me it's harder to reduce to a number is about 95% of our kids who start college are finishing it, which is pretty remarkable that 19 out of 20 kids who start college are finishing it, because that's just not typical. It's more like 60% for most schools. And so, and even the kids who really, really struggle at Providence, they're learning a work ethic through the challenging curriculum. And so they get to college and they're making it. But most of them come back and say, Mr. Davis, I know we gave you a lot of grief for how hard Providence was, but now that we've started college, a lot of our peers are struggling and we find it to be pretty easy. We go into speech class and they tell us we're going to do a 5-minute speech and everybody's really scared. And we're like, are you kidding me? That's so easy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So likewise for writing, papers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Is classical, I remember reading an article or having a conversation, but I remember a couple years ago, Clemson had like a classical program they rolled out. And they were like one of the first ones to do that. And it was kind of like you would be in a cohort and go all through 4 years with the same group. Is that a trend that you see in colleges? It
is a trend, especially among honors colleges. So like University of Arkansas has a similar deal. Like their honors college is classically oriented, a lot like Clemson's. And they're depending on, there's some schools like University of Dallas that is thoroughly classical. It's a Catholic school. But there are a lot of even state universities that especially are moving their honors programs towards classical because it's about discussing big ideas, great works, writing papers, giving speeches, developing, higher level skill sets that are going to be important for leaders. Yeah. So
one of the instances I still laugh at it. One of several years ago, we got an email about kids bringing essential oils to school. And I'm like, man, this is nice. Public school would laugh like this is a problem.
That's so funny.
And then I'm thinking, I'm like, you know what? Their moms are having them peddle these essential oils at school. Like, hey, go sell these in the bathroom.
Yeah, I think what happened is, funny small stories, but like one kid, rubbed it on another kid because he was having some problems, and then he broke out, and the other mom's like, "What is going on?" And we're like, "Okay, this is something we need to like."
Like the big scandal of 2019 essential oils at school.
That's right. Yeah.
But I smell lavender everywhere I go.
Yeah, I will say there are a lot of teachers that put it in their little aromatherapy or whatever, and it's going all day. So it's funny.
Oh, I'd still laugh at that. I'm like, if that's our biggest scandal, I'll take it.
Howard, I want to ask you something that I know is probably one of the most contentious pieces of maybe what you go through today. Mm-hmm. Okay, put you on the hot seat. So in the very beginning, I actually greatly respected and admired the idea that Providence was running opposite of the current trend in a lot of the big private schools in Shreveport by way of athletics. Mm-hmm. So I think we've talked about this a little bit too. You know, Leighton and I, as brilliant private school athletes who went on to play lots of intramural basketball, if nothing else.
That's right.
And softball. But the idea that, you know, this school is not going to be about football championships. The school is not going to be about, you know, whatever the big sports accomplishment is.
Yeah.
Because so few of these kids are, you know, just designed and geared and engineered to play, you know, very, very high levels.
That's right. Most of them are going to make money off of that. Yeah.
Correct. So with that in mind, where does that sit today? Because I know that there's pressure that comes from the other side that says, hey, to grow bigger, we need more program. How are you feeling about that?
And I'll piggyback a little, put another question on top of that, because one of my concerns was growing up in Christian schools, I saw a trend of people leaving at either 5th grade or at 8th grade. And a lot of that was because of athletics.
Yeah. So, that's a great question. And my answer is going to be a little bit layered, I guess. So when we started Providence, I kind of referenced it, but like Evangel and Calvary were like the two more evangelical non-Catholic schools, that were influential, that seemed to love Jesus, you know, and try to be living for him. But even their message was a little bit thin in terms of like how to do discipleship. But they seemed to focus more on athletics than they did on academics. And I still think that's probably the case. And so we kind of were like, we're the counter Calvary Evangel. And, you know, as we've grown as a school and as we've established ourselves as a strong academic institution, I still think academics is really, really important. But I guess the mission of our school is morphed more towards leadership development than it has just academics, because just to create smart kids who don't have a desire to influence others or the gifts to influence others is not necessarily a way to like have the greatest kingdom impact. And so when you start thinking about leadership development, there are a lot of different layers to leadership development, and athletics can be a great tool for leadership development. And so I've grown to, I grew up playing basketball, especially. And
we've seen it, by the way.
Yeah, I still love it. And as a 50-year-old, I probably shouldn't be doing that. I'm probably like, you know, threatening life and limb every time I go out. But it is where I learned a lot of leadership development and the skills of teamwork and influence and leadership. And so I guess I've grown in my appreciation for leadership and athletics. We're probably never going to have football at Providence, but we want kids to, if you don't compete, if you don't try to win, then you're not going to develop the same skill sets, leadership skills. And so, we want athletics at Providence to be competitive. We want it to be mindful of that. We also don't want it to be the one thing that if you don't do it, you're like on the out. So like we want the arts and drama to have the same kind of reality, because in arts and drama, you can develop leadership. We want, discipleship, leadership at our school to have the same kind of thing. But I think athletics is a great opportunity for a great layer for leadership development. So, I'd say we're certainly not anti-athletics at PCA, but we're not like you have to do athletics if you're going to have any kind of meaning in life, which, at some schools, that's kind of the unintentional message that's passed along.
Yeah, exactly.
A few years ago, we had a student who came, and she's no longer a student at PCA, but when she went to visit another school, she was told, you can be the girl who brings the water to the football team. And the parents are like, come on, please don't tell our kid that. And that's what I don't want to happen at Providence. But on the flip side, there shouldn't be a negativity around athletics, because athletics is awesome. It's fun, but it's also a place to develop some leadership skills and community too.
Yeah. And I think that is the concern for me would be seeing all the other schools. Like I haven't seen it done in a healthy way.
That's right.
It's always the sports become the identity of the private school. And sometimes, and that's what I like about PCA too, is you're not tied to a church, because I also see that, right?
Yeah.
And my dad was a pastor and was at several churches that had schools, and it was always this tension, and it was kind of like the mission gets lost, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, sports, and this is the first year in the LHSAA, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were in the MPSA.
That's right.
Did you see any of our trophies or jerseys on the?
That's funny. I'm a little bit older than y'all, so I was a little old school.
Well, it's funny. It's the Mississippi Private School Association. When we were in school, there were 7 or 8 schools within probably a 45-minute radius.
Here.
But here locally, yeah. And so we weren't having to drive crazy. But whenever Providence got so big, I mean, y'all's like district games were in Mississippi.
That's right. Yeah. So
Crazy.
I mean, that's part of the, just talking about the business side of it, that's part of the challenge of PCA is that growth is great, but it also brings challenges. So when we were small, we were too small to join. We didn't have 75 kids in high school, too small to join LHSAA, that's the requirement. So we joined the Mississippi League, which, there were a lot of schools with similar high school sizes, and it was fun to play those schools. It was all in rural communities. Played Central, several different schools. But then we started growing, and the growth, hit high school. And so we went from being, a normal small school in Mississippi League to being one of the biggest schools in Mississippi League within 3 years. And so, all of our district games were in Mississippi. So that meant 4-hour drives, which the first year was fine. It was kind of fun to travel, but it got old real fast. And so it's been nice to be a part of LHSA. It's nice to play local teams, local kids. I mean, at the end of the day, one reason I think it's important is because, I was telling another school leader this the other day. I was just trying to advocate for our school playing their school. But, at Airline and Benton, there are going to be leaders that come out of that. There are going to be leaders that come out of every school at some level. But there are going to be a lot of leaders that come out of PCA because of the kind of skills that we're training. And that's what we're aiming for. And if kids at Airline and kids at Benton don't get to build relationships with kids at Providence, both the kids at Providence and the kids at Airline and Benton are going to be diminished in terms of they're going to miss out. But our communities are what really suffers because those kind of relationships, when you get 20 years down the road and you're running small businesses, they matter a lot. Yeah. And so our community should have our teams our kids playing together, not only for like the good of the schools, but for the good of the kids and the good of the community when they grow up. Yeah.
Well, you shared a little bit of a story when we were at that ribbon cutting you were telling a story about how you met the Moran family.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it was a great story, right? And it seemed like a pivotal moment that really coincided with the growth of the history of the school.
That's right. So we were meeting at First Baptist Bossier. We filled out the space that was allotted to us to meet that was fire code approved or whatever. And so we were like, okay, what are we going to do? And we looked at a lot of different locations. We looked at, we were trying to find a central location in Shreveport Bossier actually, because we were the only classical school at that time. After a while, it was like this location in North Bossier. It was the Bonomo family, had some land. They were families that were integral to the school. And so they were going to sell us the land for a good price. And then Mr. Bonomo is going to build our first building. But the total price on that was going to be $2.5 to $3 million. And so, here's one interesting thing about Providence. Every year we've been in the black. So we've never, apart from donations, we've never had a year where we've lost money. But in those first years, especially, we didn't make any money. And even when we make money, it's going back into the school buildings and teacher salaries or whatever. But so we had a little bit of money, but not much, not enough to buy a building or even to rent a big facility. And so we tried to raise money from within the school, and we had 100 families at the time, and we hit every family really hard in terms of encouraging them to give. There's just some funny stories I'm not going to share, but there's a lot of funny stories. But at the end of the day, my wife and I were the ones who gave the largest gift, and that was a bad thing because we were not independently wealthy.
Yeah.
And our gift was large, but it wasn't just crazy large. And so when we finished the whole project, we'd raised around $250,000 when we needed $2.5 million. And so And a bank had told us so that meant we had $500,000 saved up, as it were. And a bank told us if you bring us $750, we'll give you the rest of the loan. And so I was like, okay, we need to get $750, $850, somewhere in that range. And so we met with a donor who had his daughter was coming to Providence the next year. And she said, my dad gives more money to St. Jude every year than y'all even need. Y'all should talk to him. He's interested in the school. He wants to talk to you. And we were like all excited. It was 3 people. It was Wayne Patton, Keith Sean, that pastor I was telling you about, and me. So we met with him. He's in East Texas, oil guy. He said, he had a great conversation, said, my wife and I love your school. We're going to give something to it, but I have a challenge for you. And we were like, great. We were like, we're ready for the check, whatever. And he said, if your child got cancer and was told there's a cure for this, there's a medicine for this, but it costs $1 million and you need it in the next 30 to 60 days, what would you do? And of course we said we would knock on the door of everybody we knew that had money and ask them to give it to us, to help us out. And he said, I want you to carry that same mentality for fundraising over the next 60 to 90 days, which was a great challenge. I mean, that really became kind of the mindset of how to think about these things. And so when he made that challenge, we started knocking on the door of everybody we knew that we had a relationship with that had money. And for most of them, we struck out, but because mostly people give to institutions where they're connected. But Keith Sean had a relationship with Scotty Moran. He thought he was a cattle farmer, and said, hey, our school needs some money and we're kind of at the end of the rope. Would you think about helping us out? And he said, how much do you need? And at the end of the day, Keith said, I think we need $350,000. And so he said, okay, well, I'll think about it. And so about a week later, he met with the 3 of us and said, how much money do you need? And I said, $350,000. And so he took out his checkbook, wrote a check for $350,000. And we were like, the 3 of us were like giving high fives. We're like, school is saved, it was 2010, the worst year that our school has ever had. And so I called the banker all excited. We didn't just get $750, we have $850. And he's like, Howard, I never thought you'd do this. But quite honestly, you need at least $1 million in order to get a loan with us. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you jerk,
bankers are tricky.
And so we called the guy who made the challenge to us and told him about the gift and what the banker said. And he said, I tell you what, I'll match the Moran's gift. And so that day we went from, having the worst school year ever, not knowing if we were going to make it, to that day was the last day of school in 2010, May 2010, to having our future secured in terms of we're going to be able to buy the land, start the building, have the school continue. And the cool thing was that was the closing ceremony day. So in those days, we did things a little different, had 120 students. And so we had the ceremony, and it was, like I said, it was a terrible year. There's one teacher who's trying to destroy the school because she was mad. And so at the very end, the Morans actually came to that ceremony. At the very end, Wayne Patton got up and made an announcement that we got the gift and that it was matched, and now we are going to be able to move forward. And I mean, it was like, hooray, cheers. And then he shared, and it was the Morans who gave the initial critical gift. And so there became a line of about 40 people just giving them hugs. You have no idea what this is going to mean for our kids. Meanwhile, the teacher who's trying to destroy the school storms out the back and, is mad. But it was just a clear sign that Providence is well named. God provides. And it wasn't us just coming up with this great scheme. It was God providing. But, and since then, I mean, we've had to raise a lot more money, we've had to probably raise $50 million, and it's come from a lot of different sources. Honestly, a lot of those gifts are small gifts that lead to, bigger things. Yeah. But the Morans have been critical supporters, along with that other challenger, throughout the life of the school in a way that, it's helped to establish us as a school. And really what funds do, they don't create the mission, they enable it. Mm. And so, there have been other schools that have gotten money and buildings on the front end, and then they try to figure out the mission. But the money in the building becomes the mission, but the mission's primary. The buildings are only that which house the mission. Yeah.
Well, and that's also to tie that story, which is a great story, but this sense of urgency that was created in that moment. And that's on a personal level in my businesses. I've been talking to my business coach. And I'm like, why is it that I'm the only one that seems urgent about my businesses growing and scaling? And like, how do you get that through the rest of the people in the organization? Like, so that I don't have to show up at every meeting to create this sense of urgency, right? That it's instilled in and really does come back to the mission, right?
That's right.
It has to be mission driven to create that urgency.
And I do think there's a sense, I mean, unfortunately, Providence is our sixth kid. And, you know, outside of Wayne, nobody owns it at the same level. So yeah, if everything's crashing, I'm up there. And if I have to work an 80, 100 hour week, which I've done more than I like to admit, it's me who does it, but that's the owner mentality. And you want everybody to own the mission, but the truth is that
nobody will ever match it.
Yeah. Right? Very few, and it's not probably healthy.
Right.
But it's the thing you're passionate about. Yeah.
One thing, this is something else I wanted to mention. One thing, that I really appreciate. And I guess it really didn't dawn on me until the end of last year. I was at the end of the year at the awards ceremony, right? But Providence doesn't give awards based off of academics, right?
Largely, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like not the honor roll and stuff like that. And I tell that to other parents at other schools. They're like, what? You know, because they go to these award ceremonies, their kids get nothing because they didn't make the honor roll, right? But that everybody is getting an award based off of, you know, a characteristic of theirs or a unique talent they might have.
That's right.
Right. Like I think Beckham got, you know, unique, the best speller award or something like that because he can spell things, which is odd that he can, funny. But he can. And, so I think that's just a cool other thing, that kind of a small glimpse of how Providence sees and views things.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the odd thing, right? That Providence is the strongest academic institution in our city, but we're not focused on test scores. We're not focused on teaching to the test.
Yeah.
We're trying to get kids not to identify themselves and their value by what they score on a test.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
See, gosh, man, it should have been around when I was there. I would have thrived. You know, it's also, me and my wife are both trained. We both went to college to be teachers, and we were both public school teachers. And you're right. I mean, when it's testing day, it is like, you know, breakfast is important, sleep's important, all this stuff, right? It's like, but then here, you know, Carter will be like, oh yeah, you know, we're taking the pre-SAT tomorrow. And we're like, what? I mean, why didn't you tell us? We got to prepare, you know, like you got to, and it just doesn't seem like it's a big deal.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because if you teach kids well, they should perform well on tests. Yeah.
So Howard, along those same lines,
I think that our counselor actually gave us the answers on the SAT. That's right. I think she was just saying, like, you know, hey,
I need some help. Yeah, that's funny.
That is a true
Howard,
story.
Along those same lines, I'm curious because, man, we're in a world of such change, such technological disruption. Obviously, that's not the focus, whereas I think maybe in some of the public schools and things, they may be trying to push more of technology as it moves along. It doesn't seem like Providence is really very interested in moving heavy into that direction. With the world changing, how would you respond to someone who says, hey, if our kids don't get this, they're going to be left behind? Like, how do you process that?
I mean, there's so much I have to say about this. Jonathan Haidt recently wrote a book on technology. I'm blanking out on it, but basically he's a Harvard trained psychologist. And I mean, the tagline on it, the takeaway on it is that technology is making us dumber and more anxious. So his book is called The Anxious Generation. Right. And it's about two things primarily. So your phone makes you an addict to dopamine hits. I mean, even I have a hard time getting off the phone like everyone does. And kids, that's not good for kids, nor for their mental health, nor for their minds. You know, number two, they're not being trained to own taking risk. And so, ride your bike without your helmet. Not really, but like, if you're always worried about how you're going to get hurt, you're never going to do things that matter. And so, teach your kids to take risk.
Resilience.
Don't get onto them for doing risky things in the sense that you're trying to train them not to be risk takers. And because it makes them anxious, it makes them worried about dumb stuff. It makes them just fearful, and that's not healthy. And so, he's the one who's been behind the movement to get cell phones out of schools. Louisiana agrees with that. How well people do that, I don't know, but that's a challenge in all schools. But then his point recently is, okay, you're not giving kids phones, but you're giving them computer screens to look at all day. Like I know in local public schools.
Oh, yeah.
The primary way they do learning now is open your screen, push start, and you're going to start your math lesson online. Nearly all learning is mediated through screens. That's a terrible idea. For one, screens don't inspire kids to learn. Screens can help you to know, okay, AI, you didn't do well on math. Let me give you an easier problem. You did well on math. Let me give you a harder problem. There's some tools that are helpful, but on the whole, it just is making them technology addicts, and technology is making us dumber. I mean, it just is.
I was Anna was doing her math homework the other day, and I walked out of the room for literally 10 seconds. And she asked Alexa to answer to a problem. And I'm like, Anna, what are you doing?
That's right.
She just didn't want to do it. She's like, it was the last problem. She's like,
And that's the thing is that, nearly every kid I know knows technology well already.
Yeah.
And so when our kids get older, we want them to do research online, write their papers online, doing presentations using, technology tools. But at the end of the day, and, teach them how to use a calculator, but wait until they're in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, so they can actually learn how to multiply and divide intuitively rather than always have to say, okay, what's 15 times 5? If you can't do that intuitively, it just creates some challenges. So anyway, those are some of the things reason we don't lean on technology. And actually most technologists send their kids to low technology schools. Why is that? Because they know the very things that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And they know that the best schools are actually schools that read books, have teachers engage with their kids, and having kids discussing things and learning and writing and speaking rather than being tied to technology. But there's this myth that educators have had for years. If we can find the right kind of secret tool, it's going to be the thing that makes education great. And they've said that about technology for years. 2020 COVID exposed how foolish that is, but most people are doubling down on it as if it's going to be the secret that fixes kids, and it only makes us dumber.
Yeah. Well said.
Yes. Yeah. Well, just at home, if my kids are on screens, it literally. You take it away from them. It's like you're taking the ring away from the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like,
Gollum, not precious.
Yeah. And I was like, and it happens fast, So we definitely have boundaries, especially during the week. Sometimes we're a little bit more lenient on the weekends. But one of the books we read recently, me and my wife, she had read it before, but Habits of the Household.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And so through that, we kind of put some stuff in place. And one of those is one night a week or one day a week, we have no screens.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. At first, it was really difficult, but just even watching my kids, because they're just walking, pacing around the house, trying to find something to do, what do I do,
That's right.
And so, it's very interesting. Yeah. But that is a good question. That I don't think about that because I remember back when I was a school teacher, that was it. You were measured, the health of the school was measured by how much technology you have and that you're using. Even when I went, graduated college, it was you have to incorporate technology in every lesson in some way.
Yeah.
So pretty crazy stuff. Well, what's next? What's the next step for Providence? You think you just open up the high school building?
Yeah. So high school buildings opened up. It's, it's going to create space for 288, 300 high schoolers so next is field. So we just signed a contract to do dirt work. It's fields are very expensive. It's crazy how expensive fields are, but we're going to build a soccer field to track around it, a softball field and a baseball field. So that's next. And then after that, we'll build a theater. So, so theater is something we had a theater teacher leave kind of last minute a couple of years ago. And so next year we'll have just incredible, two incredible people with theater are coming to PCA to run theater. And so we're hoping to make that a big thing at PCA again.
Cool.
Because it's something that if you're not an athlete, or even if you are an athlete, it's a phenomenal thing to participate in, to build amazing skills and leadership as well.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I love it.
Yeah. Anything else? Howard has Grandparents' Day today, so he has to get back to the school.
He's got to get back. Yeah. We got a grandmother in town to check this out. She came in from Mississippi, so she.
Okay. Yeah. My kids are excited because they get checked out of school.
That's so funny. That's right.
That's true.
Howard, we have the pleasure on this podcast of talking to people in this area who, quite honestly, I am thankful that they live here, right, through what they do through their business or through their, all their activities. You are certainly a person that fits that profile. So thank you for what you've done. I can't say enough about the school. We obviously are big believers, big supporters, and man, thank you for what you've done.
Yeah, well, and honestly, likewise, I mean, part of the reason we started the school is because, we could have homeschooled our kids, but we were thinking about how do we bless this community? How do we influence this community? That's what pastors tend to think about. But y'all are guys who've started businesses that are important as well. But I love the fact that y'all are interviewing and trying to create a sense of community, but also learning environment within our community. Because at the end of the day, Shreveport-Bossier is an amazing community. It has the infrastructure to be even more amazing, but it's going to be small businesses that drive the growth and health of our city. And far too often we're dependent on let's get Amazon in and it's going to fix the city. It provides some jobs. It's great. I'm glad for that. But at the end of the day, it's small businesses that create the culture and the community that we need. And so, thank y'all for what y'all are doing.
And I like that at Providence, we actually have a list, right, that all the business owners in the community at the Providence family put it on a list. So
that's right. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's your business.
Do we need to give shout outs to our sponsors, or can we cut from another episode?
We can go ahead.
All right. So speaking of our businesses, they sponsor our podcast. So Priority Roofing, locally owned, family ran business. They were on our last episode. Hannah and Shay Bailiff, great people. I had a great time talking to them, but they do commercial residential roofing repairs, replacement. You can call them 318-202-2123. Plumber for Hire, a locally owned plumbing company. Great. They do great service work. Commercial, residential, and you really get to jobs within 24 hours, which is great. So 318-709-9090.
Ivy Building Materials, 3 locations: Halton, Mansfield, and now in Blanchard.
Yes.
Lumber, building materials, hardware, paint, electrical. You name it. Small home center format. And in business since 1969.
There you go. And then the last, Clint Davis Counseling, helping people make lasting internal change for external growth and success. 318-562-6903. And man, Clint Davis's practice continues to grow. I think they just opened up a new location in North Bossier, Benton, with 3 or 4 counselors, and so just a great organization. So. Cool. I think that's it.
That's great. Howard, thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Great to see you.
Great to see y'all.
Bye.